Hello, my name is Lisa, and I'm a 30-year-old office worker. My husband George, who's 32, and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and we've now been married for 3 years. As an only child, my upbringing was quite protected. I attended a public school until middle school, after which I transferred to an all-girls private school, continuing there until college. The dynamics of an all-girls school meant we fostered deep friendships, though I wasn't particularly focused on dating. In my early 20s, I casually dated a few guys, but I never encountered anyone I could envision marrying. As the years passed, I found myself suddenly in my 30s, which alarmed my parents, especially my dad. He began encouraging me to meet men through matchmaking websites, and that's how I met George. After several meetings, George expressed his feelings for me. He's a kind-hearted man who deeply respects his parents, values that resonated with me, leading to our decision to marry. Our wedding came together swiftly with the enthusiastic support of our friends and family. However, married life brought its challenges. Shortly after our wedding, George's father fell ill and passed away, prompting George to devote a great deal of time to his mother. Though I understand and respect his dedication, it sometimes feels as though his mother is his priority, which can be frustrating. Despite this, I've learned to accept and adapt to the complexities of marriage. Recently, I've found joy in participating in sweepstakes, winning small items like makeup and snacks. But my biggest win came when I won a pair of tickets to Florida, the first major prize I've ever won. George was away traveling with his mother at the time, so I decided to give this wonderful opportunity to my parents. Excited, I rushed to their house to surprise them with the news of our trip. My mother was thrilled, expressing how long it had been since their last trip abroad. However, my dad wasn't as enthusiastic about the trip. "I've got work commitments, Lisa," he explained. Although he had some paid leave remaining, he stressed, "This is a busy season for our industry, and as the department head, it's not easy for me to take time off." My mom then suggested, "Lisa, if you can manage to get leave, why don't you and I go?" I thought it over and agreed with her. It was too great an opportunity to miss. With my dad unable to join us, I decided to speak with my boss about taking time off. Fortunately, the workload was light at the moment, and my boss granted me the leave without any issue. After work, I stopped by a bookstore near the station to pick up a travel guide on Florida, excited about the upcoming trip. As I approached our house, I noticed the lights were on. George must have returned home early. I better hurry up with dinner, I thought as I walked in. Instead of George's shoes by the door, I saw a pair of women's shoes that I recognized. My mother-in-law's presence was unexpected. "Lisa, what's the meaning of leaving the house empty at this hour?" she scolded as I entered. "Oh, I didn't realize you were here," I replied, slightly taken aback. "It doesn't matter if I'm here or not. It's time for George to be home and you should be preparing dinner and getting things ready for him," she lectured. Living nearby and having a spare key, courtesy of George, she often visited unannounced, which I found challenging. Since her husband had passed away, she perhaps felt more alone, but her surprise visits and sense of entitlement were tough to handle. Moreover, she clung to old-fashioned views about a wife's role and disapproved of me working. Every interaction with her seemed to involve some criticism or snide remark, making it difficult for me to feel comfortable around her. "Why the long face and the detour instead of coming straight home?" she continued, scrutinizing my every move. "You're such a useless wife," she criticized as she attempted to see what I had purchased. "Please stop," I objected, trying to stand my ground. However, she dismissed my protest and snatched the bag containing the travel guide. "What's all this? What do you plan to do in Florida? How extravagant," she exclaimed. "No, it's a prize I won. I'm giving it as a gift to my parents," I explained. "Well, nobody told me about this," she retorted. Just then, George walked in. "I'm back. What's going on?" he asked. "Welcome home, George. Lisa won a trip to Florida," my mother-in-law quickly informed him. "How thoughtless of you to give it to Lisa's parents without discussing it first. I would have loved to go," George said. "I didn't know about the trip to Florida either. I was thinking of giving it to my parents, I responded. How many people can go on this trip? George inquired. It's for 2 people, I replied. You should have told me beforehand. I would have loved to go too. Why are you making decisions on your own? George questioned. I thought about going with just the 2 of us, but this time I wanted to give it to my parents, I explained. You're mistaken. This time Mom and I are going and you're staying home, George declared firmly, shutting down my protests. No way, I won this. I'm going to give it as a gift to my parents, I insisted. We can plan something else another time. Right, Mom wants to go, so please try to understand, I pleaded. What are you even saying? You just went on a trip with your mom not long ago. Why can't I use my win for a trip? I argued. Suddenly, George dropped a bombshell. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce. The mention of divorce from my husband used as a threat left me feeling a wave of detachment toward him. Fine, do as you please, I responded, deciding to step back. My husband and mother-in-law, oblivious to my inner turmoil, seemed pleased with themselves. You should have been more understanding from the start, they chided. Ignoring their smug remarks, I began to consider my next steps. The following day, I sought counsel from my parents, sharing the ordeal with them. My mom, who had been excited about the trip, seemed disappointed, but understood the situation. I understand if that's how it is. We can't help it. It's better to avoid any tension between you 2, so don't worry, she reassured me. Feeling guilty about letting her down, I decided to make things right. During my lunch break, I called the airline and requested to change the trip to Florida to include my husband and mother-in-law instead. However, the operator explained that once the reservation is made, changes aren't allowed. The tickets were strictly for the winner, as specified in the documents they had sent me. Realizing my oversight, I informed the airline operator that I would decline the prize. I decided not to disclose this to my husband or anyone else, reasoning that if they were truly keen on going, they could purchase their tickets. That evening, when my husband returned from work, he eagerly brought up the trip. Hey, Lisa, did you call the airline? Did you tell them we're going to Florida with Mom? He asked. I handed him the documents and the tickets. Here, take a look at these. All the details are right here. It's important to read them, I urged, knowing full well he might not bother. As expected, he merely glanced at them before setting them aside. Try to see this as a kind gesture for your mom, I suggested. Sure, I'm more than happy to stay home. I can't wait to see their reactions, he agreed. On the day of the trip, George seemed unusually tense, a sense of unease palpable in his demeanor. When the departure day finally arrived, George and his mother faced unexpected delays at the airport. What's going on? Can you explain this? He demanded, his confusion and frustration directed at me. The airline representative calmly explained, as we've mentioned, these tickets are non-transferable, and if the winner isn't present, they become invalid. This is clearly outlined in our policy. Anyone else attempting to use them would need to pay the full fare. George and his mother had already committed to luxury hotels, stretching their budget thin, and now at the airport counter they encountered another hiccup. I'm terribly sorry, but there seems to be an issue. Could you please try using a different payment method the attendant requested? That's impossible. This card has been working perfectly fine. Why is this happening now? George exclaimed in frustration. The attendant advised, I'm afraid we can't diagnose the problem here. You may want to contact your card issuer for assistance. With no other option, George had to use another credit card. Later, he reached out to me, perplexed and annoyed. Hey, what's happening? The tickets you gave us aren't usable. This situation left George and his mother to deal with a series of setbacks that they hadn't anticipated, revealing the consequences of not paying attention to the details I had tried to point out. George's voice was tense over the phone. And now my credit card has been declined, he explained. Did you bother reading the fine print on the ticket? It clearly states they're invalid if the winner isn't present. And as for your credit card issue, that's news to me, I retorted. Not your card, George clarified. Well, I've reported my card lost. I couldn't find it in my wallet, so I suspected you might have taken it. Thankfully, it hasn't been misused, I explained. That's not amusing. You won't get away with this when we're back, George threatened. That's entirely your own doing. What you did amounts to theft, I countered. You know what, woman? I'm divorcing you. Get out, George declared angrily. Fine, just as I expected you'd say. As you wish, I'll agree to the divorce, I replied calmly. Truth be told, I had already planned to leave for my parents' house before George demanded I go. I had already packed my bags, using the paid leave I had taken for this trip. As I left the house, I made sure to take the passbook and seal it so he couldn't access our savings. I also informed the neighbors that we would be getting divorced. Upon reviewing our savings for potential division in the event of a divorce, I discovered that the funds had been depleted multiple times. I had no recollection of making these withdrawals, indicating that George was responsible. Further investigation, comparing the withdrawal dates with my daily blog entries, revealed that the money was withdrawn during the period when George and my mother-in-law were on vacation. I confided in my parents about George's proposition for divorce, his unauthorized use of my credit card, and his utilization of our joint savings for the trip with my mother-in-law. As I recounted the situation, my parents' expressions shifted from concern to sternness. I was in disbelief over George's actions and deeply hurt. During a heartfelt conversation, my father apologized profoundly. "I'm deeply sorry it's my fault for arranging your marriage," he said, his disappointment in George palpable. With a sense of responsibility, he added, "This falls on my shoulders. Leave it to me," reassuring me of his support. My father held a high-ranking position at the parent company of George's employer and was sometimes involved in conducting audits, although another colleague typically handled them. Given the circumstances, my father rearranged his schedule to personally audit George's company. During this audit, he seized the opportunity to discuss the situation with George's superior, an executive at the subsidiary. They met for a meal, during which George's superior was visibly nervous, trying to curry favor with my father, aware of the hierarchical structure and the importance of making a good impression. Over dinner, my father broached the topic of my ongoing divorce, explaining the situation. "In fact, my daughter is going through a divorce. It appears that the main issue stemmed from her husband's excessive dependence on his mother. If it were just that, I might have advised her to persevere. But it seems he also misused my daughter's credit card and depleted her savings without her consent. Under such circumstances, I couldn't in good conscience recommend reconciliation," he explained. Then, shifting the conversation towards George's work performance subtly, he inquired, "By the way, your subordinate, or rather, former son-in-law, I suppose, is George. How has his performance been lately?" "It's a busy time, but I haven't seen him much around the office," George's superior responded, clearly troubled by the revelations and the implications of the audit. The discovery of my impending divorce and George's misdeeds prompted George's superior to consider a closer examination of George's conduct at work, suspecting that it might reveal more discrepancies. To handle the divorce proceedings efficiently, my father recommended a lawyer known for expertise in such matters. "I'll arrange for a lawyer to handle the divorce proceedings. You'll receive written confirmation soon covering matters like alimony and property division," I informed George, feeling somewhat relieved to be taking concrete steps. George's superior, now aware of the situation and its potential impact on the company, assured me that he would not let the issue slide, hinting at taking appropriate actions based on what the further investigation might reveal about George's conduct. Following George and his mother's trip to Florida, tensions remained high. Upon their return, George visited my parents' house where I was staying. He seemed desperate and disheveled. "Lisa, what's this certified mail about? I'm strapped for cash. I can't afford to pay any alimony, and this property division, it's just a marital spat. There's no need to take it this far. I've apologized, so please come back," George pleaded. "What are you saying? Have you even read the contents of the certified mail? Your mother's constant mental abuse, not to mention depleting our savings and attempting to use my credit card without permission. There's no way we can reconcile, right? I countered. Please don't say that. Since you left, it's been difficult for both Mom and me. Have you been receiving icy stares from the neighbors, or have there been issues at work? George inquired, his demeanor stiffening. I suppose I hit the nail on the head, I remarked. How did you? Well, who knows? What do you think the reason might be? If you reflect on your actions, you might understand, I replied. I can't reconcile with you, and you'll have to face the consequences. Prepare yourself. Also, please communicate through the attorney from now on. If you persist in lingering, I'll involve the security company, George warned sternly. When I mentioned involving the security company, George finally relented and left with a heavy heart. In truth, everything George had come pleading about was orchestrated by my father and me. Before returning to my parents' home, I went to our neighbors and spun a tale about being kicked out by my husband and mother-in-law after they stole the plane tickets I had won in a lottery drawing. Leveraging my past experience in the drama club during my student years, my performance was remarkably convincing. Since my husband and mother-in-law returned from their Florida trip, rumors and gossip have swirled around them in the neighborhood. My mother-in-law was mortified to learn from a local busybody that she was being shunned. The community's cold reception only deepened the troubles George and his mother faced, making their return anything but peaceful. Amid swirling rumors about me taking my daughter-in-law's winning travel tickets and then casting her out, it's time for everyone to hear the complete truth. Following the uproar, my father felt compelled to start an inquiry at my husband's workplace. What came to light was quite unsettling. My husband, who also was a son-in-law to a senior department head at the main company, was found guilty of misusing his position. He would often take unscheduled leaves during peak work times to travel with his mother, routinely came in late or left early, and was even caught embezzling funds from the company. Given the gravity of his misconduct, he was immediately terminated from his position. The company also took a firm stand by announcing to all staff that the era of preferential treatment for family members of the management was over. Amidst these professional upheavals, the personal front was also tumultuous. With the help of a competent lawyer hired by my father, my divorce proceedings went on without a hitch, and I was soon legally single again. The financial settlement was just. The savings eroded by my husband's recklessness were split equitably, ensuring I received my rightful share. Throughout this ordeal, I kept a detailed blog that captured the emotional abuse I endured. These writings were instrumental in validating my experiences during the legal proceedings. Feeling vindicated after securing justice against my husband and his mother, I chose not to dwell on the past but to celebrate my newfound freedom. With the financial settlement from the divorce, I planned a much-needed vacation. Aligning with my father's company holiday schedule, we decided on Florida. Considering my mother's liking for the destination, we meticulously planned our vacation, looking forward to days filled with exploring the pristine beaches and vibrant coral reefs, engaging in retail therapy, and enjoying a rejuvenating family getaway. This trip was also a way for me to reconnect with my parents and repair the emotional strain my divorce had placed on them. It was a time to make up for the past and build new, joyful memories. Though thoughts of my previous marriage were now behind me, I remained hopeful about the future, open to the possibilities of new relationships and adventures. With a heart full of excitement for the days ahead, I cherished the present moments of happiness and looked forward to whatever the future might hold.
"Where are you? All your stuff is missing," I demanded of my husband, my voice trembling with frustration. "Yes, I moved out," William replied coldly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You never agreed to moving in with Mom, so I just went ahead and bought a house." "Bought a house? With what money?" I asked, my disbelief turning into dread. That's when she took over the phone. "That's right. My son and I have a new place," my mother-in-law sneered. "We'll see if you can survive on your own." I hung up, heart pounding. I thought I'd heard it all, but nothing prepared me for what came next. My name is Everly, a 29-year-old housewife. I married my husband William 5 years ago, and we live together in an apartment. We have no children yet. We're not a wealthy couple, but we live a decent life. We live stress-free, doing the work we both love. It was about 6 months ago that a dark cloud began to loom over our peaceful life. My mother-in-law, who lived nearby, demanded that she move in with us. No matter how much we tried to explain to her that we couldn't live with her, she wouldn't listen to us. To my surprise, before I knew it, my husband was taking her side. This made our relationship deteriorate quite badly. Then my husband took a terrible action. Since my father-in-law passed away a few years ago, my mother-in-law has been living alone in her house. She was doing fine, but began to press us to let her move in because she didn't feel comfortable being alone. "I can't live alone anymore. I don't feel safe," she told us repeatedly. But that's not the real reason. Her house was getting old and falling apart. It would have to be renovated to make it a comfortable place to live, but my mother-in-law didn't want to pay for it, so she came up with the idea of moving in with us. "You can't expect me to live in that old place forever," she said one day. However, when we got married, my husband promised we wouldn't live with his parents. My mother-in-law's house was just a 10-minute drive away. If she ever needed anything, we could get there right away. But I know she didn't think well of me even before we got married. She still makes sarcastic remarks about me every chance she gets. "Are you sure Everly knows how to handle a household?" she once asked sarcastically in front of William. After what she said, I figured if she moved in with us, she'd turn into the worst mother-in-law ever. Additionally, she quit her part-time job recently and is now unemployed. "If we live together, we'll have to bear her living expenses as well," I said to William, frustrated. "With our current financial situation, it's just not possible." However, my mother-in-law snapped, "Don't be so proud when my son supports you financially." "I work from home, and your son doesn't support me financially," I told her, but she just ignored me. "You're lucky to enjoy such a comfortable life because of my son." Her words had nothing to do with reality, because I knew there was no way we could live on my husband's income alone. "Do you even know William's monthly income?" I asked, holding back my frustration. "Of course," she said confidently. "He's my son, and you should be grateful he earns a good salary." "How so?" I asked, raising my eyebrows. "If my husband's salary was high," I added, "then the salary of a part-timer who works 3 days a week would be high too." "I'll take care of the housework so you can go to work," my mother-in-law condescendingly continued. "You can't even finance well when my son makes so much money. You're a big spender, aren't you?" she added. "No," I shot back. "I told you I'm working. I'm not a spender. I work hard every day and save money." "Well, money aside, this apartment is too small for 3 adults," I pointed out. When I said that, my mother-in-law just casually asked, "Do you want to move to a bigger place or buy a house?" Her words lingered in my mind, and a sense of unease grew. Later, when I spoke with my husband, it was like he'd been brainwashed. He suddenly changed his mind. Did he really want to live with his mother, or was he just too afraid to stand up to her? "Don't be so stubborn with my mother," he began. He even said something that made me deeply wonder about him. "It's more fun to live with my mother, isn't it? She says she'll do the housework for you. It'll be easier for you too, Everly," he coaxed. My husband was totally on board with moving in together. What should I do? I thought, completely at a loss. I resisted as long as I could, but my husband decided to take desperate measures out of frustration. He moved out of the house while I was gone for the day. When I came home and noticed his belongings were missing, I immediately called him. "Where are you? All your stuff is missing," I demanded, asking for an explanation. Yes, I moved out, he replied coldly. You never agreed to moving in with Mom, so I just went ahead and bought a house. Bought a house? With which money? I asked in disbelief. It seems my mother-in-law took over the phone. That's right. My son and I will live in the new house for a while. We may live with you when you've had time to think it over. You probably can't even afford the rent there on your own. You better be sorry, she concluded. Okay, well, excuse me, I said, and hung up. My mother-in-law was still trying to throw her sarcastic comments at me, but I felt ridiculous and ended the call quickly. They bought a house? Of course they're lying. There's no way my husband and mother-in-law could afford to buy a house with their financial resources. I don't know where they are, but they can do whatever they want. In fact, I can live on my own without my husband, and I can afford to be on my own financially. I was paying the rent with my own money to begin with, so I have nothing to worry about, even if my husband is gone. I started to seriously consider divorce. A few days later, I got a call. Hey Francis, long time no talk, I greeted my brother as I picked up the phone. You know, there's William and his mother at my house, he replied. What? I exclaimed in surprise. My brother owns a house. Right after he bought the house, he got transferred and I was left in charge of managing the house ever since. Hold on a sec, I said. I immediately checked the safe in the bedroom. It's not there. The key to my brother's house is missing. Francis, the key is missing, I told him. Did you call William? Francis asked. No, I'm sorry, Francis. It's a long story, I replied. I have a pretty good idea what may be going on. What should I do? He asked. We can call the police already, I suggested. Yeah, but they're your family. I don't think the police will intervene, my brother retorted. That's right. I'm sorry. I'll take care of it in a couple of days. Can I ask you to wait a little? I asked. Okay, let me know if there's anything I can do to help, Francis reassured me. Thanks, I responded. As soon as I got off the phone with my brother, I called my husband. To my surprise, my mother-in-law answered. Oh, I hope you're feeling sorry by now, she said smugly. Why is you picking up? Where are you? I asked her. Oh, you don't sound so sorry, are you? My mother-in-law sneered. Where are you? I demanded again. I don't need to tell you anything. You're desperate, aren't you? You don't want to give up your husband with a $9,000 monthly salary, she continued. $9,000 salary? Who? I asked, confused. Of course it's my son. A son with enough money to buy such a splendid house, she exclaimed excitedly. Ha ha ha! I couldn't help but burst out laughing. What's so funny? She snapped. William said that if you don't listen to him, he's willing to divorce you. I see. Then divorce is fine, I said calmly. How stubborn are you? If he dumps you, you won't be able to do it on your own, will you? My mother-in-law continued. Of course I will. I have no interest in a husband who only earns $900 a month. Silence filled the line. My mother-in-law didn't respond. Maybe she was too stunned to speak. I smirked and added, Hello? Still there? Mother of a man who barely scrapes together $900 a month? What are you talking about? She retorted. I'm saying that William makes $900 a month from his part-time job, I replied. I think you're missing 1 zero, she insisted. No, I'm not. It's $900 a month, I corrected her. When I asked William about his salary, he said around 9, my mother-in-law explained. Yes, that's right, around 9, I agreed. Well, I guess it's hard to believe that your son only makes $900. Well, $9,000? That's quite a high salary. It was thanks to my salary that we could pay all our expenses. By the way, my salary is around 5, I concluded. 500? She asked. No, 5,000, according to how you think, I replied. I'm not being supported by him. My husband quit his job a few years ago. Since then, he only works part-time 3 days a week. When I told my mother-in-law about this, she didn't react, and I went on with my story. By the way, the house that you live in right now, the house you think my husband bought, It belongs to my brother. This house was bought for me by William, she argued. No, it's my brother's house. I was in charge of it while my brother's family lives in another area. He gave me the key, and William took it without permission. So what you and William did is a clear criminal act. So I'm going to report to the police, I threatened. Wait a minute. Okay, we'll leave, but please don't call the police, she pleaded. My mother-in-law hung up the phone, screaming. I was sure she and my husband were in a heated discussion by now. When I went to check on my brother's house afterward, my husband and mother-in-law were gone. They must have run back to their house in a panic. I immediately contacted my brother and apologized for the trouble my husband had caused. I still had one thing left to do: divorce my selfish husband. I signed the divorce papers and sent them to my in-laws' house. Then my husband called me in a panic. You're kidding, right? I'm sorry, and I apologize about the house, so please reconsider, he begged. I can't be married to a thief. Please sleep happily with your mother, whom you love so much, I said coldly. I can't live if you leave me, he pleaded. Get a full-time job. Good luck making $9,000 a month, I replied. But my husband didn't sign the divorce papers easily, so I brought in a lawyer, and the divorce was easily granted. I was able to get a clean break from the impossible mother and son who tried to force me to live with them. My husband and mother-in-law continued to live in the shabby house, apparently. William went to the unemployment office to look for a full-time job, but because of the long period of time he spent working part-time, it was difficult to find a company that would hire him on a full-time basis. They are still living on his $900 income, and his mother started working part-time again. My husband's mother complains to him every day, and they fight constantly. I moved out of the apartment I was living in with my husband and moved into a new place. I don't have to support him anymore. Now that I'm alone, I'm able to work from home more than before. My income is increasing steadily, and when I save up some more money, I'm thinking of buying a house for myself.